Believe in yourself. Know that you can handle anything. There's nobody in this world, I don't care who it is, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Thomas Edison, or Barack Obama, whoever you want to talk about, none of them came into this world with anything that you didn't come into this world with.
That was Sean Croxton, and this is the SHAIR Podcast.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have Sean Croxton joining us on the show. And Sean was introduced to me by my good friend and Facebook private group member, Joy Dotson. Thank you so much for the introduction, Joy. Joy said she wanted to put us together because she felt we had the same energy and interview style. So I'll let you guys be the judge of that. So once I reached out to Sean and he agreed to be on the show, that's when I started doing my due diligence on him. And I realized that Sean is more than just a podcast host. He is an author, he's a writer, he is a motivational speaker, he is a coach. He started the underground wellness movement. He's had over 10 million downloads for that particular podcast that ran for 7 years. And if you go to his website, he's got a free version of his ebook, The 1%er's Mindset, 7 Steps to Beating Fear, Doubt, and Indecision, and How to Get Anything You Want, available for free on his website. And right next to that offer, you'll see a beautiful quote that states, "It's not about getting what you want, it's about what you're willing to give and who you must become to get it." So go to Sean's website, pick up that free ebook, and also my absolute favorite podcast from Sean is the quote of the day. I now listen to that one every single day. It's between 5 and 10 minutes long of different inspirational speakers that will blow your mind. And I got to tell you, of all the podcasts that I've listened to, and I've listened to a lot, this is the podcast that I now recommend the most. So without further ado, let's dive into Sean's episode. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. Organifi is an organic superfood supplement that takes 30 seconds to make with no blending, no juicing, and no cleanup. Organifi is a coconut and ashwagandha-infused green juice that is gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, vegan, and absolutely delicious. My wife and I drink it every single day. We absolutely love it. We've noticed a significant difference in reduced stress, in improved digestion, improved mental clarity, and it boosts our energy levels. So not only is it organic and upgraded with 11 superfoods, if you order now, you're going to get 20% off your order by using promo code SHAIR, SHAIR. So go to the Organifi website, www.organifi.com. Organifi is spelled ORGANIFI, and make sure to put in your promo code SHAIR, SHAIR, and get 20% off your order today. And for those of you who are wondering what's the best way to support the show, well, here's a few options. Number one, you can always donate to the SHAIR Podcast. And the easiest way to donate to the show is by going to the website, www.theshairpodcast.com. Go to the top right corner of the website, click on the donate button, or on any of the yellow donate buttons throughout the page. And there you can donate via PayPal, Patreon, or Bitcoin. All of your donations will go exclusively towards covering the production costs for the SHAIR Podcast. And all those production costs are listed on the donation page, as well as all the information you need to know to make your donation today. The second way to help support the show is by subscribing on iTunes if you have an iPhone, or on Stitcher Radio or any other podcast-related app for your Android phone. When you subscribe to the show, it helps boost the ratings for the show as well as the show's ranking on those platforms, and will make it so much easier for anyone seeking a recovery-related podcast to find the show. And while you're there, please feel free to give us a 5-star rating and review. It's another spectacular way to support the show, and I also love reading those reviews at the beginning of each episode. And speaking of reviews, here's 2 of our latest. And the first one is from Getting There, and the title is Love the Show. and getting there right. I love this show and particularly love the Andy Ramage episode as well. And for those of you that don't know, the Andy episode is the 1 year no beer episode, which is SHAIR episode 140. So make sure to check it out. And the next review is from Newton's Third Law. And Newton writes, "This is a part of my daily routine. I love the podcast. I talk about it when I make it to meetings. I'm not able to go to many meetings since I live in a small town and lack of transportation. I've learned so much from listening on how to improve my daily routine, knowing I'm not alone with my addictions, and how to keep my hope going. Been 30 days sober and couldn't have done it without this podcast. Keep up the amazing work, HP baby." Newton's Third Law. Thank you so much. And HP baby, 30 days. I love it. And as always, I can't tell you how grateful I am to get these reviews and hear how impactful the SHAIR Podcast is in people's lives. So folks, keep those reviews coming. And the third way to help support the SHAIR Podcast is to share the podcast with your friends. If you love the SHAIR Podcast, if you're getting value from the episodes, then share them on your social media network, share them with your friends at meetings, and help us spread that message of hope and recovery. And while you're recommending the podcast, also make sure to invite your friends to join us on the SHAIR Podcast Facebook private group. There are thousands of recovering addicts that are positive, helpful, and being of service. So if you're not ready to go to meetings or you need an addition to your meetings, then this is a perfect place to get support and be of service. So go to Facebook, type in SHAIR in the search bar, SHAIR Private Group, and the private Facebook group will pop right up. Now a quick message from Transitions Daily and then on to the show. Would you like to join a free, anonymous online group that offers a daily topic email with popular recovery resources accompanied by a secret Facebook group for discussion? Then go to dailyaaemails.com for more information about Transitions Daily. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery. Hey, Sean, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to be here.
I'm excited to have you on the show, buddy. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling really good. It's a Friday. I'm looking forward to having a good weekend. And yeah. How about yourself?
Doing wonderful. Same here. It's Friday. So right after this, I'm probably going to take a nap. That's where I'm at today. That's the beautiful thing about where I'm at is right after this, I can take a nice little relaxing snooze and get ready for the weekend. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
I heard that.
All right. So folks, today I'm very excited to announce that we've got Sean Croxton joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. And the way we were introduced is one of our amazing SHAIR Podcast listeners, Joy Dotson, who's a big fan of Sean's. She went out of her way to introduce us and put us together. So I want to just give a big shout out to Joy and thank her so much for this introduction. And so, guys, a little bit about Sean. In 2007, Sean created one of the first health-based video channels on the internet, sharing seemingly complicated matters of health in a way that everyone could understand. Soon after, in 2008, he launched his first podcast, Underground Wellness Radio. The program ran for 7 years with over 10 million downloads and 348 episodes about all things real food and functional medicine. And now he's the host of the Sean Croxton Sessions, one of the internet's most popular self-help podcasts, and is working on launching Money Mind Academy. That sound about right, Sean?
That sounds pretty much right. But my current podcast, I don't do the Sean Croxton Sessions anymore. I had to let that one go. I have a daily podcast Monday through Saturday called The Quote of the Day Show, where I feature short 5 to 10 minute clips from motivational talk. So people wake up in the morning, they turn on the quote of the day, get their wisdom for the day, get motivated for the day, and people seem to like it.
Oh, man. Okay. So then you've shifted because, so the one that I was listening to recently, which was Jen Sincero.
Yeah. Which one? I've interviewed her. Yeah, I've interviewed her twice.
Right. The one where she's you are a badass at making money.
Oh yeah. Good book. Really good book.
Okay. And that one, so that was from the podcast that you're no longer doing.
Yeah, I gave that one up. The Quote of the Day show, when I started that, it really took off, and doing both shows was going to be a little too time consuming for me. So I made a decision that I can no longer spend 25, 30, 40 hours getting ready to interview one person for an hour because I'm so meticulous about my interviews. It's crazy. I'm a nut when it comes to prep. And so now doing the Quote of the Day it's a lot easier, much better on my time. And at the same time, I just started a new segment called the Interview of the Month. And so I just do one interview per month, and it feels really good.
Are you still working on this Money Mind Academy?
Yeah, absolutely working on this. Somebody just asked me about that, as a matter of fact. That is very likely something I'm going to launch in January when everybody's got that whole financial New Year's resolution thing going on. But, it's a huge need that a lot of people need a solution for, because, of course, you've been raised to believe, or so many of us have been raised to believe, that money's bad and people with money are greedy. We don't know how we're worth. People feel like we're not deserving of earning the amount of income that we need to earn. People don't want to be, we want to be prosperous, but at the same time, we're afraid of really taking on that prosperity consciousness and some of the things that might come along with it. But typically those things that might come along with it are things that are kind of in our heads, and I could talk about that all day, but that will be coming out at the very latest in January, and it's going to be the greatest thing that anybody has ever signed up for.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. When I was listening, obviously what attracted me to that episode, was about the badass at making money. And then when she starts out the interview and it talks about all the limiting beliefs, surrounding, making money, having money, attracting money, right? I was like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to be digging into here with Sean. Mm-hmm. For my listeners, most of the time I have recovering addicts and alcoholics. I know they're going to get a lot out of this episode, but this episode is for me. So again, Joy, you rocked it out. I'm really excited to have. And one of the things she said was like, the reason why I like Sean so much is you guys have the same energy. So I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's get this thing rolling.
Love it. Good call, Joy.
Yep. All right. So first of all, just take us into your normal daily routine, the daily routine that you follow. A lot of us have daily routines, especially in the mornings, that we follow for success. So tell us about yours.
I take my routine very seriously. If I get off my routine, my whole day is shot. I get up at 5:30. I do my transcendental meditation for 20 minutes. I get off my butt and I go outside about 6 a.m. and I go run. I either run around the neighborhood or I'll go on a walk. Typically, I just kind of alternate the days. My joints can't take it every day anymore.
Right.
And so I do that, come home, get right into the shower, get out the shower, put some clothes on, get on the road because I live right over the freeway. And so I can see when traffic starts to back up. And so if I leave at like 6:50 in the morning, it's perfect. I can get right to the coffee shop. But if I leave at 7 o'clock, it's like going to be like a 35 to 40 minute drive. And so that 10 minutes makes a huge difference. And so I get in the car, I drive to the coffee shop. I'm usually the first one there. I take a picture for Instagram so everybody knows like it's 7 a.m. and I'm working, when everybody else is asleep or just barely in bed or getting out of bed. And I do my writing. And so I have a newsletter that I write for the Quote of the Day on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so that's the first thing I do before I open up my email, before I really look at, a lot of social media stuff and all that. I sit my butt down and I write, and I have a chai latte and maybe a little bit of toast, and I just rock it out. And, I love starting off my day that way because number one, I get to get grounded and centered with my transcendental meditation, which I started doing last maybe November, December, which has worked wonders for so many things. But also I'm able to get my fitness in as well. Those are the two things, like if I don't do, I think about and I kind of ruminate on all day. Like I got to get my meditation, I got to get a run or some physical activity. And so I like getting those out of the way first. Get to the coffee shop, work. I'm typically done with like the bulk of my work by about 11 a.m. So I get off my butt, I leave the coffee shop, I get in my car, I drive like 2 parking lots away and I go to the gym. I shoot a little basketball, I work out. I'm done with that by about noon. I go get some lunch and then I come home and I just get to do whatever I want to do for the rest of the day, which is typically like reading books and stuff like that.
Dude.
Big read.
I love your daily routine, especially the morning routine. I like the whole routine.
It's not bad.
No, it's phenomenal. Are you married?
No, I'm not married. No, not yet.
This is a possible amazing work-life balance that you have. So bravo.
Yeah, it's not bad. You know what? I don't think there's ever a such thing as work-life balance. You know, I work, I love it, but work is my life. And so the stuff that I do for work doesn't really feel like work, you know, like reading books and all this stuff and like writing. I love doing that stuff. And so like it's my work, it's my calling. And, you know, some people say, you know, what would you do if for no money? Like what I do right now is so fun, and the creativity that it allows me to have. I mean, if I didn't get paid a dime for this, I would probably still do it anyway. It's really cool.
I feel the same way. I'm right there with you. Now, before I dive into your story, I want to focus in. There's two areas I like to touch base on before we start the storytelling part of the interview, and that's the spiritual connection. I have a very strong spiritual connection. I think it's very important for many of us, right? Especially as we've transitioned through some tough moments in our lives. When we connect with our spirituality, it's our anchor that allows us to propel us through the day and through our lives moving forward. So can you tell us how you maintain your spiritual condition, the conscious contact you have with your higher power?
Number one is meditation is huge. Just going into that quiet space and connecting with the power within is huge for me. Again, like I said, that's been a big time game changer since I started doing it in November or December of last year. I think another thing is just the continuing removal of the layers that have been covering up that divine, great being within me by putting myself in uncomfortable situations that really give me no other choice but to grow. Because really that's what spirit's all about. Spirit is all about growth. You know, we have our ego that's all about status quo, just like keep things the way that they are, because if you try to do anything new, it's unsafe and we might fail and you might find out things about yourself that you didn't really want to know. I do my very best to identify when my ego is running the show and when it's time to let spirit do its thing. And, you know, again, meditation's huge. Self-awareness is huge. A lot of the studying that I do is huge. I spend a lot of time reading various authors, and these authors, primarily what they do is they interpret scripture. I was raised, you know, kind of Catholic. Like my family wasn't Catholic. We didn't go to church as, you know, a family. However, I did go to Catholic school, you know, from K through 12. And so I learned a literal approach to the Bible. And for a long time, it really turned me off to religion and God and finding that higher power. I didn't want anything to do with it. However, through the studies that I've been doing over this last couple of years, I'm very grateful now that I have that foundation of knowledge about scripture, because it's allowed me to study these books like Neville Goddard or Joseph Murphy or Robert Collier or Florence Scovel Shinn, I believe her name is, like all of these authors who have taken scripture and made it understandable, like kind of decoded it. And so, you know, I believe that, you know, I am a son of God, like one of the sons and daughters of God. I believe that God, and I don't really think of God as like, you know, what I was taught as a kid, that he's just this old guy in the sky and, you know, he's got a big long beard. Like I really don't think of it that way. I just think that there's this greater power, and this greater power put a piece of him or herself or itself within me and left it up to me, gave me the free will to use this life and to use the situations that I get into, to use the situations and circumstances, I should say, to peel off the layers that are covering that piece of itself within me in order to discover who I really am and what I'm capable of. And through my reading and through my learning and through my application of what I've been learning, I have an understanding of myself and my capabilities that I've never really had before. And it's so cool to keep on stripping away those layers, because I honestly feel like I can do anything. You know, there was a long time in my life where I didn't think I was able to capable of achieving some of the things that I've been able to achieve, or achieve some of the things that I'm going to achieve. But I know there's no doubt that there is plenty of greatness within me, and I'm going to do whatever I can to find it and to use it.
Oh my God. 12 minutes into this episode already, and it's absolute gold. I mean, I got to tell you, I don't know how many people out there are listening right now, but you articulated how I feel about spirituality in about 2 minutes. That's exactly how I feel. I just have never been able to articulate that. I can't even say the word articulate.
and I probably went longer than 2 minutes. Sometimes I get carried away. Somebody interviewed me on their podcast the other day, and we went 2 hours. And I was like, 2 hours passed? I was just talking. Yeah, but
bring it, man. I mean, this is absolute gold. And yes, I mean, this is exactly what we talk about. There's so much resistance to spirituality, especially in the recovery community. People that just come in that have been beat up from the ground up, and are struggling to piece their lives together. The first thing that we want to introduce them to is another way of living, another way of thinking, another way of believing, change their belief systems about themselves and the world around them. And one of those belief systems is the belief systems around spirituality, to try and remove that dogmatic concept of religion that intuitively comes with it, especially how you were raised, what your parents taught you, what you learned in school, whatever your surroundings were, right? And that's what you are now repelling and bring you into a new level of consciousness. I love removing those layers because that's what we talk about. We talk about removing those onion layers so we can get to the core of things, so we can get to the heart of things. Actually, one of my interviewees had said, I don't like saying, we remove the onion layers, because when you get done removing the onion layers, you got nothing, right? I like to say the artichoke, because when you remove the layers of the artichoke, you get to the heart of it, Yes. And I love the way you put it together. I'm going to transcribe what you said just now, and I'm going to have those in the show notes, guys, right? So you have it, so you can own that. You can put that in your pocket, right? So listen, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that, Sean Croxton wasn't born like this, wasn't born enlightened the way that you are, that you have evolved into this person by a lot of experience, a lot of hardships, maybe not a lot of hardships, but I'd like to know. This is the part of the interview where I'd like is, because I have a lot of questions, but what could happen is when you tell your story, they might just answer themselves. So what I'd like to know is where it all began. What happened to you in school? Did you always consider yourself an entrepreneur? Did you always think that you could just get out on your own, do things? Or were you one of those guys that transitioned through life and went through the workforce, got the education, got the job, realized it wasn't for you? So I want to know what your story was leading up into who you are today. And more importantly, if there was some challenges that you faced with drugs and alcohol, I'd love for you to expand on those, if there was any of those moments.
Right. I mean, I guess the story really, in terms of me being an entrepreneur, I think I was maybe born with the entrepreneurial gene, or maybe I just got it from somewhere. My dad, growing up, he was a really, really hard worker. He got dishonorable discharge from the Army. He was very well decorated. So he had to go sell shoes at Macy's, and he was a really, really hard worker at Macy's. I remember there being like awards around the house, and he would win like these 10-speed bikes for, hitting his sales quota and all that stuff. And he worked at the Macy's in San Francisco, and he would come home and tell us about the celebrities who came in and asked for him and all that stuff. He was really a really, really hard worker. And on the weekends, he would go to the swap meets and he would sell the most random stuff. He would sell like butterfly knives and stun guns and like fake Gucci, Rambo knives as well, fake Gucci and Guess like sweatshirts and stuff like that. And I remember I used to just be out there with him. I was maybe 7 years old, and he had this old telephone company van. It was green and white. It was really ugly, but he would pack that thing up with just merchandise and then just set it out on the table. And I just remember seeing my dad walk around with a big fat wad of money in his pocket. And I think that's where the entrepreneurial spirit really came from. Just like seeing my father out there on the weekends, like just making money. And did that wad of money just really fast. I still remember what that wad of money looked like, and I wanted to have some for myself. And also, I remember I was so fascinated by the word entrepreneur because, when you're 6 years old, you're just learning how to read and all that stuff. And the word entrepreneur is kind of a funny spelled word. You can't really sound it out when you're 6 years old. So I remember just being fascinated by, like, what does that mean? What is that? And it's so crazy because, that was my dad's favorite magazine. Like when Entrepreneur magazine came, like that's what he was reading. And it was so funny, like full circle, maybe 2 years ago, I actually got featured on the Entrepreneur website, entrepreneur.com website. So, if my dad was still around, I know he would be so, proud of his son for being featured by that magazine. It was huge. And so, fast forward, my parents ended up getting divorced, and it was just a real nasty divorce, and a whole lot of stuff happened there. But my dad was no longer around. My dad picked up. He left one night. We didn't know where he was at, and I didn't see my dad from the age of 10 up till about 17. Didn't see him. Didn't hear from him. Anything like that. And so myself and my brother kind of became men of the house, so to speak. And in order for me to make any money, because my dad wasn't contributing at all, I saw my mom, getting up early in the morning and going to work, maybe 6 o'clock. Actually, my mom usually wasn't even home when I woke up for school. And she was probably not home till like, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night because she worked at the phone company. She worked at a property management place. She worked at Mervyn's as well. So my mom was like hustling. Wow. Just to keep food on the table. So that's where a lot of my independence comes from. But in order for me to have money, I had to go out there and hustle. So I always had a job. Like the day I can get a worker's permit, like I got a worker's permit. And I had all kind of jobs. Worked for a property management company as a custodian, worked at a video station, worked at a produce place, worked at the Boys and Girls Club. I used to go around at the Boys and Girls Club with a big hefty bag and pull all of the bottles and cans out of the trash cans and literally carry them home, which like maybe a mile away. And I would keep them so I can take them to the recycling station and get money. I just wanted to I would go out to the swap meet with my uncles or my grandfather and sell like baseball cards that I had and baseball gloves and just random stuff that I had and just be super happy that I can leave the flea market or the swap meet with $25 in my pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it was my thing. And then, fast forward to college, there was I don't want to get in trouble for this, but there was like a certain rapper who died in a tragic way. And I remember finding his CDs. This was like 97. Somebody had some like bootleg CDs of like new music that had not been released yet, like the original stuff. And so I saw this online and, me and my entrepreneurial spirit was like, I need to get those CDs. And I'm going to find somebody who has a CD burner and I'm going to like make CDs and sell them on campus at San Diego State. And ordered them. 3 weeks later, they came. My buddy Max hooked me up with his boy John, and we literally started releasing albums. And I would go to the dorms over at SDSU and I would have like listening parties. And I'd be like, yeah, this one's dropping next Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? Just shoot, page me and I'll come by and I'll drop one off. And so I used to walk into the dorm with a box full of CDs and walk out with a box full of money. Yeah. And so, entrepreneurship is just I see a need or I see a problem and I provide the solution for that problem and people pay me for that. And so, getting into like underground wellness and what I'm doing now, it wasn't like, entrepreneurship wasn't brand new to me when I did it. It was just like something that has always been growing inside of me since I was 6 years old and saw that big wad of money in my father's pocket.
Oh my God, that's powerful. That's powerful. So for you, your intensity and your drive started as a child watching your dad and that wad of money. Cause we've talked about this or when we talk about the law of attraction, we talk about visualization. When we talk about vision boards, you put an image in your mind or you put a picture up and it's a constant, right? And so your mind just kind of, leads you to it. Right. So was that wad of money that your dad used to carry around?
I'm not sure if that was the image that I had. Because, for a long time, there was a lot of anger I had toward my father. And so I didn't really want to think about any of that stuff. I don't want to think about anything that had anything to do with my dad for a long time. I just knew that I liked making money, and I was always down to work really hard for it. I never had a problem with hard work. But I do. It's so funny. I was just doing a coaching session. I was just like, what do you want? Because she's kind of moving in 10 different directions at the same time. And when you do that, you really don't go anywhere. When you don't know what you really want, when you say, I just want to make more money. Well, I can give you $1 and you've made more money. Or you say, I just want to help people. Okay, well, you can walk outside and help somebody right now. And so we got to get specific. And so, after watching The Secret, when it first came out, I remember I saw the advertising for it and whatnot on the internet, and I instantly bought it. And I remember it came, and I popped it in. My roommate sat down there with me and watched it, and his buddy Andrew came over, and we're sitting on the couch watching The Secret, learning about the law of attraction. And about halfway in, I turn around, and they are sound asleep. But I was blown away. Yeah, I was blown away. Like when I got done, I was like, oh man, I got to watch this again. And I'll tell you something crazy about this, right? Is that I never see my last name, Croxton, anywhere. And I'm watching the movie, and in the background, there's a sign for a business, and it's called Croxton something. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, oh my God, that's a sign. This is a sign that this is for me. I need to do this. I need to do this. And so I went out and I got a board and some push pins and some magazines, and I started cutting stuff out. And actually the vision board, it's probably over 10 years old now. It's behind me, behind a door in my office here. And everything has come true. Everything, with the exception of a trip to Belize, but I just kind of don't want to go there anymore anyway. But but everything has come true because I set my intention, as you were talking about. I created the image, and when you create that image, it's almost like, punching the destination into the GPS in your car. You're doing that on a brain level, and when you do that and you believe that it's going to happen, your brain will just unconsciously start taking you and making you do stuff that you normally would not have done if you did not push that into your brain. And so it's been quite a ride. And, one thing that I tell people is that, when you have success, and, there's a lot of people out there who feel like imposters, because they get to a certain level of success and they're like, oh my God, I'm gonna be found out because I have no idea how I got here. I hear this all the time. And that's the brain. The brain is I spend a lot of time studying the brain, and on top of scripture and all the other stuff that I study. But the brain, like I said, will literally unconsciously have you doing things, have you making decisions, have you going to certain places, will give you these intuitive feelings, will make this little voice in your head say, hey, maybe you should go do this. Hey, maybe you should pick up the call. But you don't really realize that you're doing it. It's just that GPS saying, turn left here, make a right up here, 800 feet in front of you, make a U-turn. That's just how the brain works. But the brain cannot do that until you give it a clear, specific, defined, visual, highly detailed image to work from. And if you don't have that image, you are not going to move forward. And if you're not moving forward, you're not staying in place. You're probably moving backward and letting the rest of the world pass you by.
You know what, though? But here's what I want to get into, too, because I know there's got to be some hardship in there. And I know that, this, as soon as you start talking about your dad, your tone changes a little bit. So is that something you wouldn't mind sharing with us? Like, what happened after the divorce? Did you ever talk to your dad again, before he passed away? Like, what was that journey like?
It was confusing, when you're 10 years old and your parents get divorced. Especially the way that my parents got divorced. I remember being at school one day and playing basketball outside. I was like in the after school care program. And I saw my mom drive by one day, just kind of down the street. And I was like, that's weird. Mom's never, over here at this time. She picks me up later. And I don't think I said anything about it. Then the next day she came by, and I remember she had my brother in the car. And so we drive through Alameda, and that's where we ended up living. And we go to this apartment building, and she has a key. And we go up some stairs, and then we're in an apartment, like an empty apartment. Then we go up some other stairs, and we're in this like big room. And I'm like, what are we doing here? So I'm 10, my brother's 15 at the time. And she's like, this is where we're going to be living. And I'm like, I thought she was joking. I was like, oh, that's funny. And she gave me this serious look, and my brother gave me this serious look. And I was like, what? She's like, I'm leaving your dad, and you guys can't tell him about it. And he's going to go to work in a couple of days. And when he goes to work, we are going to move our stuff out and live here. And I was like, whoa, because that was crazy. Because I knew there were some minor problems to me and my family at the time.
Right.
But nothing serious enough to like warrant a divorce. But, you're 10 years old. You really don't know what's going on. A couple of days later, we were standing at the fence, my mom and I talking to the neighbor, and my dad left. And I remember she looked at me and she was like, you all right? And I'm like, I'm okay. And my dad pulled down the street and went to work, and my uncles pulled up, and we started moving out. And so my dad came home like almost to an empty house. And it wasn't the first time this happened to him. I think my mom was his third wife who left him.
Oh, wow.
Divorced him. Yeah. And so, there's a period of time that probably lasted a good 15 years, where a 10-year-old who doesn't understand relationships, who doesn't really understand divorce, who doesn't really get much of anything, he blames himself for that stuff because that's really all he knows. A 10-year-old feels like the world just kind of, revolves around him or herself. And so for a long time, I blamed myself for my parents' divorce. And, fast forward maybe a month or so, and I got to skip a part because I'm sure my mom wouldn't want me to share this part because it has to do with her and some stuff. She didn't do anything, something my dad did to her. But one day, my dad just packed up and left. And I remember he called and was like, hey, man, I'm leaving. I'm like, where are you going? Can't tell you. Okay, see you later. And that was it. I didn't hear from my dad until I was 17 again, when my brother had his first daughter, Taylor, which was my father's first granddaughter. He came to Alameda to meet my my niece. And it was really weird, because I remember he had a video camera. My dad was really into video cameras, and he had a video camera kind of pointed at, the room where everything was going on. And I always wondered what it was like for him to watch that when he went home. I remember like my dad, I want to say he tried to give me $50. Yeah. He was like, here's $50 for you. And I remember when he left me on the table, I think it was $100. Like that $100 was going to like last me up to the age of 18. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so when he tried to give me this $50, I was like, no, man, your $100 was enough. And at that time, 7 years later, I doubt that he realized that I still remembered that, and so it was just awkward. It was weird. And, it was just kind of like a surreal moment. And, and it was uneventful at the same time beyond that $50 thing. And so, moving on from there, I just had a lot of anger in me. I had a lot of abandonment issues going on. When stuff happens in the family, and, not to blame my parents for anything, when things go wrong, it's up to the parents to like sit the kids down and just like make sure that they're okay, and to understand like, yo, this is like, everything's all right. You didn't do anything wrong. Immediately, just so the child knows. And I don't think I really got any of that. So I had to create my own story around it. And so, but they were doing the best they could. So, fast forward to when I'm, I don't know, maybe 22, my dad got pancreatic and esophageal cancer, and he went quick. And, we talked a couple times. We didn't talk about anything in depth at all, but at least we got that chance to talk. And, then he passed away, and I remember I cried for like an entire day, and then that was it. It was just kind of like, I just had to get it out, and just, it's just that whole knowing that there won't be like a reunion, knowing that that's never really going to happen, that relationship's never going to happen. And so, we did that. He passed away, and learning some of the things about my father, as an adult, because my uncle Robert, who recently passed away, he lived in San Diego. And so I saw him, every so often, and he would tell me, things about my father and the way that they were raised and things that went on, and the beatings that he got and how bad his father was to him, as well as his brother and his brothers and his sister. I understood that he was doing the best he could, that he didn't have the best role model, that, my dad had switch marks on his back as an adult, from being a kid, from getting whipped all the time. And, knowing that my dad was like a tank commander in the Korean War and, blew people up and was in some serious situations. My dad wasn't right. It's so funny. I went to Philadelphia maybe 5-6 years ago, and I met my Uncle Sonny. It was my first time meeting my Uncle Sonny. And I remember walking up to him in the convenience store, and I was like, "Hey, Uncle Sonny, I'm Sean, Fred's son." He's like, "What? I can't believe my eyes. You Fred's son." He says, "Man, your daddy was a trip." You know what I'm saying? Because my dad was a trip, man. He was a different kind of dude. Really smart, not a whole lot of education, but really, really smart. He can do things that you'd be like, "Damn, how can you do that? Like, how do you play the piano without an education? Like, how do you play the saxophone? How do you draw so well? How do you play sports so well? How'd you build the second story of our house, like pretty much by yourself?" Like, I just wonder as an adult, like how he knew all of this stuff. But also as an adult, I, again, know that, as a kid, you think that your parents have all of the answers. You think your parents have it all together. But as you grow up and you get to be 25, 30, 35, and you look at your own life, you go, "Nah, they really didn't have it together because I don't have it together right now." And so, yeah. And so that was it. And, there's bad times, but I'm also the person I am because we went through that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I ask
my brother?
Go. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I could talk forever. My brother is the father that he is because we went through that. My mother is the incredible mom that she is because we went through that. We had to go through that trauma to get here. Unfortunately, it happened, but at the same time, we came out the other side better.
Yes. And that's what I wanted to touch on immediately. It's these coping skills that we've developed, and not only that, these new tools that these coping skills and these new these new character traits and values that have come into our lives because of all these traumatic experiences. But there's a couple of things that you do along the way, and children that experience abandonment issues, they look for comfort in sometimes very dysfunctional ways, right? And throughout this time, while you were evolving, where did you find your comfort?
I found my comfort in books. Really, I found my comfort in books. I found it in basketball. I found it in my work. I really haven't had a alcohol or drug dependency issue in my life, surprisingly. And, especially with all the abandonment stuff and the depression and all that I went through as an adult, as a young adult. I smoked pot when I was in college, just like everybody else did. It wasn't like a coping mechanism. It was more like fun more than anything else, bonding with friends and stuff like that. But I only smoked to a point. I was the responsible smoker, where like in college, people stopped doing their homework so they can get high, so they can smoke. I didn't want to go back home. I wanted to be able to stay in school. So my reward after spending 6-7 hours in the little study area in Maya Hall at the dormitory, my reward for putting that work in was to go outside and, pass the joint with the friends, but I always had control over it. I remember having roommates who would literally just wake and bake, and I'd be like, seriously? Like, how do you even do that? Like, I don't understand, like, how do you drive like that? I don't understand, like, how do you go to school? How do you even function? Because, when I would smoke, I would just sit on the couch and talk about like how we live inside of a ball, suspended in space, just get real creative and start talking about weird stuff. Right. I think the only time when I really had an alcohol possibly dependency problem was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think I had a really successful online summit. It might have been the Real Food Summit. I can't remember. And I lived in downtown San Diego for about 5 years. I had all of this money, and I was just like, you know what? I don't feel like working right now. I'm just going to take some time off, and I'm going to party. And we would go out. Me and my boys would go out 4, 5, 6 nights a week and just drink.
Wow.
And my thing was like the old fashions. I remember the first time I had an old fashioned, I was like, "Oh, people drink this? This tastes flammable. This is crazy." But for some reason, I kept on drinking them, and before you know it, I can just suck them down like they were Kool-Aid.
Yep.
And I remember my brain was starting to get fried. And I'll never forget, I was hanging out with a buddy of mine. We partied in San Diego during the day, and then he was like, "Hey man, you want to go to Vegas?" And I'm thinking he wants to go to Vegas like on another weekend. I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm down to go to Vegas." And like 5 minutes later, he, was done doing whatever he's doing on his phone. He's like, "Cool, because we're going there at 7:30. We got a ticket." I was like, "What?" And so we literally go from a party in San Diego to a club in Vegas within like 2 hours. And I remember I was like, this is, it was like my moment of my life where I was like, I'm old. I can't really do this anymore. And I'll never forget that the next day I had to be interviewed by my friend Cynthia Garcia now. And I couldn't put words together. Like usually I'm a pretty articulate individual, but I could not put my words together. And at the same time, when I would just drink anything that was slightly sweet, it would make my teeth hurt. It was like the alcohol was like dissolving my teeth. They were getting really sensitive. And I was like, this is not good. And so I just stopped. I just stopped drinking old fashions. And, now, I might have had a beer every now and then, but that just is not my scene. I think I had to go through that phase of like living downtown and having fun and drinking and doing all that stuff. Never drank and drive because I would just walk home.
Right.
Never gotten any major trouble or anything like that. Never wasn't taking women home or anything. I was just hanging out with the guys, drinking too much. But I don't think it was so much a coping mechanism for anything. I think I overdid the fun. That was it.
Was there anything that you could say that you had or had developed like maladaptive sort of coping skills throughout your childhood, especially during, what was going on with your parents and while you were growing up?
I think that, I'm from a family where growing up, there wasn't a lot of expression. There wasn't a lot of affection going on.
Yep.
So I feel like one of my coping skills, I'm not even sure if this is a coping skill, it can be classified as a coping skill, is just to hold everything inside. The frustrations that I had and, the curiosities that I had and the things about myself that I didn't like or that I didn't like about other people, I would keep them inside until I blew up.
Okay.
And I used to have a terrible temper. Like a full-on blackout kind of temper. Like, oh, for real? I threw that chair across the room? Seriously? I do not remember. And it wasn't good. It wasn't good like within my relationship. I remember my college relationship was stormy. It was, it was irons flying, getting thrown at me. It was stuff flying all over the place. Like it was not a good space. And that lasted for a pretty good while. Like even when I was doing underground wellness for those first few years, I was a little nuts. I would scare myself sometimes where I'm like, yo, you need to chill out. You're going to end up doing something really crazy one day. But I feel like through the education that I've had over, just reading, just reading and just learning and practicing and understanding more about who I am, I've been able to really calm that down. Do I have my blow-ups every once in a long while? Yeah. Are they as crazy as they used to be? No, it might be like 2 or 3 really loud expletives. And, that's really it. But I feel like I do a much better job these days communicating with people, working things out before they get to that point where I'm like, okay, I'm about to blow a mushroom cloud.
So let me ask you this, because when you talk about your dad now, right? And you've said this already a couple times, that that was the best, he did the best he could. And, he had a really tough childhood. So there was a lot of, empathy when it came to understanding what was going on with your dad. When did you have that moment when you started looking at your dad and saying, he's just a human being, having a human experience, doing the best he can, with the tools he was given?
I might have been mid-20s. I can't remember exactly when that was, when I just kind of made peace with the whole thing. No idea. I think it was kind of like a gradual thing, and I just kind of eventually got there. Yeah, I can't really put my finger on exactly when it happened, though.
No, that's fine. The thing is that for us, especially, your audience that you're listening to right now are recovering drug addicts and alcoholics that they're in the process of recovering. Some of us have a lot of clean time, and some of us have a small amount. But one of the things we face with, some of the things we battle with, very, very tough to do, is to forgive, to let go of things, right? We want to hold on to these resentments because it fuels us. That, there's a lot of underlying feelings behind the anger and the resentment that we don't want to touch because they're very delicate and very sensitive. So we run with the anger, we run with the resentment. You talk to somebody about forgiving, right? And they're like, I ain't never forgiven him, ever, right? Mm-hmm. That kind of a thing. Can you give us your testimony to what it did for your life, for you to do that, to embrace that idea, and how you've applied that in your life today?
It lightened the load, I should say, and increased my frequency. It wasn't like I was dragging, that thing around with me all of the time anymore. And of course, the conditioning takes a little while to start to, come off, we'll say, because, I even think till this day at 39 years old, I still think I have minor abandonment issues, because that's some stuff that happened when I was 10 years old, when I was very impressionable, but as for the man himself who did the abandoning, it's so funny. I was actually doing the intros for my quote of the day show this morning, and one of them was about forgiveness. And John DeMartini actually puts this really well. He says that there's two sides of everything. For every good, there's something bad. For every praise you get, someone's criticizing you. For every positive, there's a negative, on and on and on, right? And I think it's important for us to look at the situations that we need to forgive for, or the people who we need to forgive, and understand or shift our focus or swing the spotlight to the good stuff that came out of it. For example, maybe you were in a relationship and you were just a real ass and you totally screwed up, and, you can't forgive yourself for it. But at the same time, there might be some good that came out of that. Maybe you learned something about yourself, and it was, by learning that you were willing, you started to take action on doing better and changing yourself. Maybe you're in a relationship with a woman and you were terrible to her, but maybe because you were terrible to her, she got out of the relationship with you and found the person who she was supposed to be with for the rest of her life. We gotta look at those things and say, there's nothing on earth that's 100% bad. There's always good stuff there if you look at it. And, like I said earlier, forgiving people, letting that stuff go, it really just lightens up the load. I always tell people, like, the goals that you have in life, from a spiritual level or a vibrational level, they live on a different frequency. And on that frequency, that higher frequency is what we need to match in order to achieve that goal, to meet that goal. But if there's one thing that's just going to kind of hold us down and lower our frequency, it's the lack of forgiveness. It's resentment. It's regret. It's that stuff that just kind of pulls us down and just keeps us from ascending in life. And so just know that if you want to get to the next level, if you want to reach your goals, you got to let some of that stuff go. Is it easy? No. Do you have to forget? No. People say forgive and forget. No, I'm never going to forget some of the stuff that has happened to me in my life, but I am going to let go of that negative emotional energy that comes along with it. Because, if you're having a hard time forgiving somebody, that person very likely is walking around in life probably happy with what's going on in their life, not even knowing, they don't even know how much impact they still have on you. So I refuse to allow somebody's error, somebody's mistakes to continue to hold power over my life. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
I can't do it. Yes, is the conditioning still there? Yes, but is it as much as it used to be? No. But does my father run my life the way that he used to? Absolutely not. And I think a lot of people's fathers or mothers or whoever abused them or whatever may have happened. Not that I don't have empathy for that. But we're allowing these people in these situations to continue to control our lives, and we can't have that.
Oh man, this is so beautiful. As a matter of fact, and in 2 weeks is going to be the forgiveness one I just recently recorded. And everything you just said, I had already mirrored. So what's going to be great is that the people that have listened to that, they get reinforced. Because really, once you've evolved as a human being, and you start looking at the human experience, you start, embracing the fact that we are all one. We're all on this little planet, and we all make mistakes. We all create wreckage, or whatever the case may be. And not only does that give us an opportunity to forgive others, it also gives an opportunity to forgive ourselves. Give ourselves a break and let go of all the anger, the resentment, the bitterness that doesn't serve us anymore, for no other reason than for yourself.
Yeah. And when we can't forgive ourselves, and getting back to the whole money thing, one thing that we do is we punish ourselves, and we say, no, we're not worthy. We don't deserve to make that money. We can't, we're not worthy of that. We don't deserve it. We're almost subconsciously punishing ourselves all the time because we won't allow the good to come into our lives because we feel bad about something that we've done in our past. We're not willing to just let it go.
Absolutely. It's
huge. That's huge. That's what's going on with a lot of people. They're continuing to punish themselves over and over and over again and are not opening up themselves to receive.
How do you get them to break through those limiting beliefs?
I think one of the things that people can do is identify what those limiting beliefs are and putting them on the stand and cross-examining them to see if they're really true. And usually, and this is typically how the ego works, the ego tries to hide stuff from us, so some of these beliefs, they don't really, a lot of them are kind of unconscious sometimes. You really have to do some exploring in order to find them. And when you put them on the stand, things change tremendously because you go, whoa, wait. That's not true. That never has been true. Like, why do I even believe that? And typically it was something that happened when you were very young and impressionable, I should say. Maybe you picked it up from, somebody like an authority in your life at a very young age. Because, when I think it's from the ages of 2 to 4, our brains are in theta. It's a type of brainwave. They're primarily in theta. And when somebody is being hypnotized or when somebody is in a hypnotic trance, they're in theta. That's why they're so suggestible. That's why you can pretty much take over their brains. But that's how we spend a couple of years of our lives. And so those people who are around us, family, religious figures, babysitters, teachers, media, their beliefs become our beliefs. And we don't even realize it. We think that we've chosen them somehow. We didn't choose those beliefs. We just inherited them from somebody else. And so it just really helps to say, okay, what's this belief? Where did it come from? Is it really true? I read a book called The Structure of Magic, Part 1. I think it's by Bandler and Grinder. And it's an NLP book, a neuro-linguistic programming book. And it was really helpful for me because it introduced something called deletions, distortions, and nominalizations. It has to do with language. And, to me, like when I was walking around in college, I remember I had this voice in my head saying, nobody likes you. Nobody wants to hang out with you. Nobody, blah, 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 blah. And when you actually listen to your language and you go, oh, wait, that's a deletion or that's a distortion. And what I mean by that is like, okay, does no one really like me? Seriously? Really? In your whole life, has nobody really liked you? And it's just doing simple things like that, listening to your language and just basically, listening to the bullshit that we say to ourselves and identifying it and saying, okay, that's not true. So you can move on from it and get a new belief. Another thing that I'm all about is affirmations. If you say something to yourself, I am, fill in the blank, I am, your subconscious mind is going to take that on. Your subconscious mind that's within, it says, oh, I am broke. Well, I'm going to keep you broke. I am.
I'm never saying that again.
Right. Yeah. I catch myself all the time saying stuff where I'm like, ooh, that was a really bad I am statement. I'm going to say something that's completely opposite, because the subconscious mind just accepts whatever you believe to be true. It just says, okay, I got you. I'll play that role for you. And so, using affirmations and not just saying the affirmations, but feeling the affirmations. The subconscious mind, it works on emotion, not just words. And so, I am rich. I am rich in all things. I am in control of my life. I am a happy person. I am confident. I am calm. I am serene. Say that stuff over and over and over again and really feel like it's true right now. Over time, the subconscious mind goes, well, he's been saying it over and over again. It must be true. Let's go ahead and be that. This is why there's so many people in prison who literally believe that they didn't do it, because they've said it. They've said it so many times. They've told that story so many times. The subconscious mind says, well, maybe what really happened didn't happen. Okay, we'll go ahead and take this on. And so you're very suggestible. So use that to your advantage and program new beliefs into yourself. But I think one of the first things to do is to understand the beliefs that you already have. Like I said, put them on the stand, show beyond a reasonable doubt that they are not true, and then replace them with something new.
That is beautiful. I love it. And that's something recently that I've discussed or mentioned in one of my mini episodes too, is these are just thoughts, and you have the right to challenge any thought that comes in and ask yourself, is this truth or is this false? You can make that decision for yourself. You can challenge your thoughts. And this all falls around the same thing, and it's comforting to know that I'm on the right track there, Sean.
Your stuff.
Well, here's the thing. The more that you hear it, the more that, and this is why, I remember when Joy reached out to me and she's like, you should check out Sean. I'm like, this guy looks the furthest thing from an addict that I've ever seen, and I started listening to that one episode, and I started reading your website, and I was like, wait a minute. I think I need to do this one for me, And I have, I'm the Mr. listening to Tony Robbins, and I listen to the all of JLD's podcasts. You know what I mean? And I'm deep into all the self-development books and self-development podcasts and all, and so it all revolves around the same concepts. The terminology changes just slightly, but you hear it all the same, and it's almost the same concept of just surrounding yourself and listening to it. Eventually, you start to believe it. It just becomes part of your reality, and you stop repelling it. You stop pushing it back so far and go, "No, that's not me. I could never think that way. I could never do those things. I could never accomplish those things." Right? And those subconscious thoughts limiting beliefs that I've had my whole life. Right, that I've recently been challenging more and more and more. When I quit my job and went full force into the podcast, I think that's another reason why she introduced this, because I quit my job just cold. I used to work for a gambling casino, making great money, and I just quit, and I said, honey, we're going to have to just, she makes really good money, so she was like, all right, well, we're just going to have to tighten our belts, because we were 50-50, you know what I mean? So 50% of our income wiped out. And she's like, well, I hate that business that you're in, and this is the direction you should be going in, and somehow we'll just figure it out. And the first few months were terrifying. Like, are you going to figure it out yet? I'm working on it. I don't know how much faster I can do this. And I just started reaching out to my network and asked for help. And they said, you ever got a coach? No. Well, you need to go get a coach. I ain't got no money. Figure it out. So I got a coach. Now join a mastermind group. I don't got no money get some money for mastermind. Join the mastermind. I just had to start using my words. I just started communicating with my wife, and I said, look, if I'm going to go to the next level, I'm going to need some help. And I'm going to have to ask from help from people that have done this before. So when you told me when we were emailing back and forth, you said, no, next Friday I got a mastermind course. I'm like, I need to talk to this man right away. I need to get him on the phone right away. And everything that you've been saying so far has been for me. And I'm so grateful for it. I've just been loving this interview. It's been phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So listen, we still haven't gotten into this transition from you leaving college, right? And then going into the wellness, because that's also what's got me fired up. My life has changed innumerably since I quit doing drugs and alcohol. But, I went into the fast food and sugar and all kinds of other bad behaviors, when I got clean and sober, and I had to peel away all that. Those I use as comfort, the fast food, the salts, the sugar, the fats, and that would comfort me. And then I had to transition away from all that. So when someone is doing like the underground wellness radio, that was your first move into the wellness space, right? Or no?
Well, I was a personal trainer. I graduated from San Diego State with a degree in kinesiology, emphasis in fitness, nutrition, and health. I became a personal trainer very soon thereafter, right after graduation at the on-campus gym, as a matter of fact. And I still work out there 20-something years later. And I started a YouTube channel, maybe late 2006, early 2007, right when YouTube first started. And I just started making videos about complicated matters of health. I would just break them down in a way that people can understand, and people just loved it. And the subscribers started rolling in. I was like, oh, it looks like I'm on to something here. And so I stuck with it for several years. And about a year into it, I started Underground Wellness Radio. I mean, there were hardly any podcasts back in 2008. Like, people didn't even know what a podcast was. And it's really cool just to know that I was like, one of the first ones out there podcasting. And I was interviewing the authors of the books that I was talking about on my YouTube channel, just for some third-party credibility. And it just kind of ended up being something that I love. Like, I love doing video. I think I'm really good at video. I think I'm pretty good at interviewing people as well. And people really took to the interview. So I just kept doing that. And then started writing and creating products and all that fun stuff. But it really all started with YouTube.
And so from there, you went into Underground Wellness Radio. And that's the one that had the 10 million downloads?
Yeah, it had 10 million downloads. I started on Blog Talk Radio. We had a live show for about 5 years or so, and then started doing the recorded ones. And people really enjoyed those episodes. People still listen to them now. It's pretty cool.
So what is it about, in broad strokes, obviously? Tell us a little bit about what Underground Wellness Radio was all about. What did you guys talk about, and what are the big takeaways that you took from because that was 7 years of producing this. So you must have had a bunch of aha moments and a lot of things that presented themselves, in your universe, a lot of opportunities that propelled you in the next direction.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, I thought I was going to know everything about food and nutrition and fitness. Like, that was the whole point of getting the degree, and applying some of that information, or as much of that information as I could, to my personal training clients. I found that the stuff just didn't work. Everybody just kept getting fatter. We'll put people on the food guide pyramid, 6 to 11 servings of grains and all that stuff, and low fat, and eat this packaged product and the other packaged product. And really, it's just a food lobby pyramid is what it really was. And I started, after a while, I stopped blaming my clients for not getting results. I had done that for about 3 years, and I was like, you know what? This is kind of like across the board. People aren't getting the results. There's probably something wrong with this foolproof program that they taught me in college. So I started reading books that were completely counter to what I had learned in college, and started learning about the paleo diet and real food and functional medicine. Start learning about hormones and digestion, the immune system, and all of these things that weren't being taught in school, as well as many different things that doctors still don't even know about, like a leaky gut syndrome, or, what the thyroid, or what the liver has to do with thyroid hormone production, or what conversion, I should say. Everything in the body, it's very linked. We have a lot of specialization in our medical field right now, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But everything is so connected from a holistic perspective that you kind of have to look at the whole thing in order to understand what's going on. And so, fortunately, I was able to link up with all of these really amazing health experts and authors, and to give them a platform that there really wasn't one at the time, to share what they had been learning, everything from leaky gut to, dysbiosis and, gut permeability issues and what do you call it? The ratio of good flora to bad flora in the gut, like all of this stuff we would talk about. And again, nobody's doctor was really talking about it. So you had people going in and out of the doctor and the doctor saying, oh, nothing's wrong with you because, your test came out normal, but the patient doesn't know that the tests that are being run aren't the definitive tests. These are like old school tests, and the normal ranges are all screwed up. And so we were able, as a community of experts and connectors to share this information with more people so they knew what to ask for when they went to the doctor, so they can actually become advocates for themselves, in that medical world.
So is Underground Radio, if I went into iTunes, could I still find all those episodes?
Yeah, I need to fix this soon, but you certainly can. You can probably find about 50 episodes there. The rest of them are on the Underground Wellness site as well as on Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, I'm going to have that listed on the show notes. I so love what you're doing. I have had, for me, when I've talked to a lot of my friends who are having health issues, and when I was super, super stressed, right, and I'd go to the doctors and they go, no, everything's fine. And I'm like, well, why am I blowing up like a puffer fish? You know what I mean? And I can't sleep. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep. Well, maybe you need to change your diet and do a little bit more exercise and this and that. And so it's just kind of the generic stuff. And then I finally went to, someone had recommended a friend, and he was a hormone specialist, holistic hormone specialist. And he immediately started testing me for my adrenal glands, which is something that most doctors don't even want to discuss. They don't want to discuss your adrenal glands and what's going on in your hormone levels and those kind of stress-induced sort of issues, right? And so he found out that, my cortisol levels were off and my testosterone levels were off. He's like, we got to start getting these into balance, and he starts prescribing me like herbs. You know what I mean? Like it was a whole different approach. And I respected the heck out of this guy. It did start making some drastic changes in me. And I think that's where, we need to have this conversation more and more and more and more, because medicine, from Western medicine, is a lot about, here's all the packages that you need to go buy from all the producers that we support. And that has nothing to do with, your wellness and you getting better. It's got to do with how much money we can earn from this experience on our end. And I don't know if that's what you found as you dug deeper into the Underground Wellness.
I definitely found that. But and at the same time, I hate to make a blanket statement, because there are some really good doctors out there. There's also a lot of doctors who are just, I kind of feel bad for doctors, because, doctors go through some serious training. They go through years and years of training. And I don't think any of them, when they go into it, expect that they're just going to have 12 minutes with a patient. I don't think they really understand that the practice is pretty much run by the insurance companies. I don't think they get that. And we have a lot of unhealthy doctors. We have a lot of job dissatisfaction with our doctors, because they're just in a situation that they don't really know how to get out of. And so I agree with you that it's really screwed up. The pharmaceutical influence in our medical industry is off the chain. A lot of the research that's being used to prove that these medications are effective is kind of sketchy research. I'm talking about do a whole bunch of studies and just give the studies that show that it works to the FDA, and everything else gets swept under the rug. It's some crazy stuff going on out there. There's a lot of books. The one book that comes to mind is called Pharmageddon by Dr. David. I can't remember. Actually, he's not a doctor, David something. But when you read that book, you'd be like, oh my God, this is crazy. But like I said, I agree with your statement that it's a screwed up system, and a lot of us don't really know that there's another option. And there's I'll be honest, in the holistic health space, there's still a lot of quackery going on.
Oh, yeah.
There's still people out there who don't know what the F they're talking about. There's still a lot of people who are well behind the science themselves. And so it's so challenging as a patient to even know what to do. It's confusing. It's like going online to find out like what you should eat. It's like, oh, there's conflicting information all over the place. And so it's a sad state that we're in. But at the same time, I'm all about, let's take care of our bodies in the first place so we don't get sick.
Yes.
Well, let's take responsibility. I'm a personal responsibility kind of dude. When I see stuff going on with healthcare and healthcare being taken away, and people on the news going, I've got diabetes and I'm not going to be able to get my medication, or my medication cost is going way up, and I'm like, go get healthy.
Yes.
Just start taking care of yourself. Exercise, move a little bit. I bet you if I went to their house, there'd be nothing but fast food and packaged food all over the place. Like, cut that stuff out if it's really that important to you. Stop spending $2,000 a month on medication, possibly, and hire yourself a personal trainer with that money and go get some real food, And so we just need to get back to a health-based model where we're focused on health. If you focus on health, you're going to get health. If you focus on disease, which is what we do, we just got done talking about thoughts.
Yep.
If that's where your thoughts are, that's how your health's going to be. And that's going to be the state of our medical industry. It's all disease, and it keeps us diseased because that's all we're thinking about. And that's all we're shining our spotlights on. Let's get back over to the health side and take control and take responsibility.
Well, what society has taught us is that instant gratification got us into this mess, and instant gratification is going to get us out. So anytime I want to stuff something, I just stuff myself with junk because it tastes good, it feels good in that moment. Then when I get sick, I just go to the doctor, he prescribes me pills, that fixes me. It's all instant. And people have lost the ability to think for themselves and work for things, right? It takes work to get out of that pickle, that mess that you're in.
And this is an addiction show, and it's really an addiction. I mean, if you've been studying Tony Robbins, the 6 human needs, those 4 personal needs, I think he calls them, I forget, love and connection, certainty, significance, and uncertainty. What happens, and this is why we have a lot of obesity and overeating issues these days, is people are meeting those needs through food. They're getting love and connection through it. They're getting certainty through it. They're getting variety through it. They're getting a sense of significance through food. And I think Tony says if you're meeting 3 of your needs, at least 3 of your needs through some type of substance, it is an addiction.
Ooh.
And so we have people who are addicted to food. They are meeting their basic human needs through food. And we're not tackling that side of it. We're saying diet and exercise. But if we don't find a way to replace food and, give somebody other options to meet those really important needs, they're always going to go back to the food. This is why people relapse all the time. I do consulting and masterminds and all that stuff. And if somebody's in weight loss, I'm like, that's cool. I love it. I used to be in weight loss myself, but it's such a challenging demographic. It's so hard to get them to take action if you don't interrupt that pattern and make them aware of the fact that they're filling their needs, basic human needs, through their behaviors.
Oh, man, that's beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. And this is something that absolutely gets talked about in my private Facebook group all the time. It's just the immediate graduation from drugs and alcohol to filling those needs. And this is a great way to describe it. The next time somebody discusses it in the group, I'm going right into it. You're just trying to substitute these needs that you have, these needs that you fulfill, these needs, these 6 basic needs that you have with food. And all you're going to do is just make yourself fat because it's not going to accomplish what the end goal is or what you're trying to accomplish, right? And all that comfort that you're trying to give yourself, right, quickly turns to discomfort, dissatisfaction, unhappiness, depression, and then it just spirals out of control. So, man, this is beautiful. It's
substitution. There's drug addiction on my mom's side of the family, and that's what happens. They get off the drugs and they go to food.
Yep.
Because they're just substituting. They're kind of meeting the same needs. And it's, I wish there were just more positive ways to do that, where we can present options of more positive ways to meet those needs.
Well, we do, and we discuss those definitely when it comes to addiction, right? And
Right.
a lot of it has to do with that spiritual connection that we talk about, that fulfillment that you get from helping others, from doing service, right? There, it fills you, right? And so when you're in self-centered mode, right, then it's like, what can I stick inside of me? What can I buy? What can I put on top of me, right? What can I drive? I, me, right? Mm-hmm. And when you get out of self, right, and you start gravitating towards others, that feeling or that emptiness that you've desperately starting to fill starts to come back to you when you're helping others. That's one of the main tools that we use for getting people, to stop self-sabotaging themselves, right?
I love that.
As quickly as we can, we get them into service.
It's so funny. This last week, I've actually stopped myself from going to the bookstore because I have way too many books. It's a problem, and I've been thinking about getting the Alcoholics Anonymous book. Is there a very spiritual approach in that book? Do you know?
Absolutely. The whole book is based on spirituality. It's a spiritual, not religious literature. And it all focuses around, which is why we have so much resistance when people first come in. All right. God is mentioned in the book. Spirituality is mentioned in the book. And they're like, I didn't come over here to go to church. I just came over here to stop doing drugs and alcohol. And you guys are starting to preach to me, and they don't, and we're like, whoa, just easy does it. Right. But at some point, we're going to introduce you to a new concept that's going to take you away from that ego-driven hedonistic behavior that you've learned all these years about, that self-centered fear and that need to comfort myself instantly. All right. And we're going to move you along into a spiritual path that's going to allow you to help others. Right. And you're going to start feeling, these emotions, these positive emotions that you've never felt before, and a lot of guys, what I've noticed is the ones that embrace the program the easiest and have the easiest problem with being selfless is guys that are parents, because they've experienced that with their children. Right. So they understand what that selfless love, as soon as you start talking about their kids, like, oh yeah, I get that. Right. Mm-hmm. But guys that don't have kids, right, it's a little bit more difficult, but that's where we are. That's where we lead them towards.
Yeah. I love that. I think what got me interested in reading that book was David Hawkins. You ever heard of David Hawkins? Power versus Force.
No. I should.
Anyway, so he has these different levels, these different numerical levels for consciousness. And one of the highest levels was those who have gone through Alcoholics Anonymous.
Really?
Because there's that. Yeah.
I gotta write this down. What's it, Steven? Yeah. What is it?
David Hawkins, Power versus Force. I'm actually flipping through it right now so I can find the level. It might have been in a video that I watched of him, however. But yeah, I was like, ooh, maybe I need to go read that so I can up my game a little bit. Yeah.
Power versus Force. Is that what you said?
Power versus Force. Exactly.
Oh, dude, that's. I don't read, and I'm getting that.
Do it.
I love it. I'm going to go into that. So tell us, Sean, I want to know about, there's one thing you said. All right. You have a goal to teach 1 million people how to use their minds and give and get everything they want in life. What is your strategy behind that?
My strategy is to use my podcast.
I got it. Makes sense. There it is.
Use the podcast. I mean, every single day. I mean, gosh, the reviews that we get for the podcast are so amazing, and the emails that we get, just people are like, it's the most important 10 to 15 minutes of my day. Easily listening to your show, because it's just what gets them going. They learn something new every single day, or something that they've learned before gets reinforced, because repetition is the mother, father, sister, brother, second cousin of learning, right? So you got to hear it over and over and over again. And so that's one way. I do plan at some point, I'm not sure when this is going to be, but at some point going back to YouTube, because I think that what I did on YouTube from a health perspective, taking those really complicated matters of health and making them easy for people to understand in a kind of an entertaining way. I think I can surpass that impact if I do the same thing in this personal development space. So I want to get into more speaking, being on camera, doing more teaching, getting on stages, and really taking this whole message to a whole other level. Because, the podcast is cool. There's a lot of people on the email list, but we're way, way short of 1 million people. And I want to reach those 1 million people however I can. And so I'm gonna use these gifts that God has given me. God has given me some really cool gifts. I got a gift to speak. I got a gift to teach, I should say, as well. I got a gift to break stuff down in an understandable way. I got a gift to interview people. I have a gift of writing as well. And so sometimes I get confused because everybody says you got to pick that one thing. And I'm like, oh man, I'm good at so many things. And so, but I really feel like that intuition inside of me is saying, man, you gotta go back to video. Like that's where it's at. That's what really, really connects with people. And that's the stuff that goes viral. So I can reach that 1 million people.
Dude, this is like unbelievable. I love it. And I have said that. I have kicked myself for so many years, struggled with limiting beliefs, struggled with self-worth, with self-esteem, on so many levels because of so many things that we don't have time to go into. But as I journey, as my life just continues to ebb and flow through this journey, right, I start to break through some of these limiting beliefs, and when somebody is like, hey man, I heard your podcast, and I was like, I was given a gift. I was given this unbelievable gift of communication, right? And I say the same thing. I have this unique style of interviewing. I connect with people on a different level, and I need to just dive in, with both feet, right? Because I know that this is exactly, what God has intended for me. Like I have a purpose on this planet, right? And for me, it's simple because, I was almost died because of drugs and alcohol, and, the recovery saved me, right? The program of recovery, right? But then it was me adopting so many different spiritual principles, adopting values into my life, and restructuring and redo. I rebooted my whole system and created, a new version of myself, a better version of myself, right? And I'm just taking all those things that were already there, but I kept pushing them to the side and going, well, I can't use these for anything, Right. But that's just me again, that little voice that you were talking about, right? That's constantly keeping you down, right? And not allowing you to evolve. The ego telling you you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you're not fast enough, this is not you. Who do you think you are, right? The imposter syndrome. And I just finished doing an episode just, 2 weeks ago or last week about comparing yourself to others. All of this was discussed in there, man, and it just feels like at some points you just make these full circles. And now I'm at an impasse again, right? And it's time to springboard, So, I'm just blown away by this interview.
I love it, man. I could do this all day, man.
I just feel like
I love it. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how life works? You make so many changes and you get to the top of that summit and you're like, yeah, I got here. I did it. And then you think that you're going to be totally satisfied forever. And you're like, I want to go do something better. I want to do something bigger. Yep. So you got to tear down what you did before, create space for something new, and then you just grow again. It's this process I learned from Daryl Rutherford, whose work is amazing. I'm surprised nobody really knows about this guy. His name is Daryl Rutherford. If you want to read a really good book about money mindset, he's got a book called So Why Aren't You Rich? And he shows this cycle of life called create, persist, destroy. Create, persist, destroy. So you create your image. You start to create something new. You start to act on an idea. You persist your way through it. You reach that mountaintop. You achieve it. You're satisfied very briefly. Then you go through what's called divine discontent, where you're like, that spiritual side of you says, okay, we got to go grow some more. Because we can't just stand here. We can't just stand here because, like I said earlier, you're either moving forward or you're moving back. You can't just coast because you can't coast uphill. The only way you coast is downhill, right? And so you got to get to that point where you say, okay, I got to do something new. I got to challenge myself. I got to grow. And so before you get to, what happens to a lot of people is they hit that summit and they start to coast, and then they start to feel like they don't have a purpose in life. Then they start to feel a little depressed, and then they start to feel a little apathetic, and then they start to hit rock bottom. You know, when you really understand this create, persist, destroy model, you can catch yourself before you start to slide down the hill. And you can say, oh, I reached the mountaintop, but you know what? Before I start destroying everything and tearing everything down and making myself feel bad and making up all these stories, and so I can hit rock bottom and plummet and catapult my way back up, you make that decision right there. Like, okay, I've reached here. This is where I want to get. What's next? That's what I'm always thinking. What's next? What's next? What's next? How can we grow? Because if we don't grow, we're letting our ego take over, and the spiritual side of us is done.
Oh, man. I could almost end right there. It's so beautiful. I'm going to be recording so much. I'm going to be transcribing so much of this. All right. So listen, Sean, before you've mentioned so many things. So please, can you give us a list of the books you would recommend, how our listeners can reach out to you? What's the most recent productions that you have? What's available for them to listen to? I went over there and typed in Sean Croxton over on iTunes, and 3 different podcasts popped up. So give us everything you got.
All right, swing my microphone around for books. I'm looking at my library right now. Of course, there's like the basics: Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. I recommend people read that book over and over and over again. You know whose work I've just gotten really deep into is Robert Collier. He wrote a book called Secret of the Ages, and I just got done reading his, this morning I got done reading Riches Within Your Reach. Oh, 2 really good books. Like I said earlier, So Why Aren't You Rich? Huge. I've read that book 6-7 times. If you really want to get into like the brain and understand why a lot of these self-help platitudes really work from a brain level, like, you know, where your attention goes, your energy flows, and, you know, create an image and visualize, like see what actually happens physiologically, read Life Unlocked. That's Life Unlocked. I'm losing my voice. By Dr. Serini Pillay. It's not an easy read by any means. I've had to read it probably a dozen times in order to even begin what he's talking about in that book. But I highly, highly recommend it, because it's one thing for people to say all of this stuff and personal development speakers to get on stage and say, you know, what we should be doing. But it's really, really cool to know how it's working. Those will do it.
No
go
doubt.
on YouTube. My favorite speakers are Tony Robbins, Lisa Nichols, Les Brown, of course. Eric Thomas is amazing as well. In terms of my podcast, I have 3 podcasts. One that is currently active. We already talked about Underground Wellness Radio. There's the Sean Croxton sessions as well. Listen to my first episode with Bob Proctor. Listen to both of my episodes with Lisa Nichols for sure. Check out the one with Jen Sincero as well. But like I said, the one that I got going on right now, which is Monday through Saturday, is the Quote of the Day show. So just get up in the morning, listen to 10 to 15 minutes of just nothing but wisdom that is curated by me and my content manager. It's a game changer for a lot of people, and I highly recommend it. In terms of finding me online, of course, the website is SeanCroxton.com. I have a free ebook on the site called The 1%er's Mind, 7 Steps to Beating Fear, Doubt, and Indecision that people seem to love. I still can't believe I wrote that first chapter, because when I read it, I'm like, what got into me? You know what I'm saying? This is crazy. I'm like, wow, this is like some James Allen stuff right here. It's nuts. And then what else is there? I'm on Instagram. I really don't spend much time on Facebook. I'm mostly on Instagram at Sean Croxton. We got a new real food bar out called the Jerf Bar. The Just Eat Real Food Bar just came out about 3 months ago. We're crushing it right now. So happy with how that thing's going. Totally real food, organic, gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, GMO-free, just nothing but real food in that bar. And so that's available at jerfbar.com. You can get a discount, 10% discount with the code QOD10. Again, that's QOD as in dog 10. And that's pretty much it, man.
How do you spell that? Is it JERF? Jerf?
Yep. Just Eat Real Food. Yep. It's a community that I started back in 2010, 2011, and just kind of taken on a life of its own. It's pretty huge.
Beautiful. I'll have that promo code all listed on the show notes. So make sure to get to the show notes right away, folks. All right. So Sean, tell us, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Oh man. I'd say the best advice I ever got was from my late Uncle Robert. And he said, Sean, if you want to find out what you want to do with the rest of your life, or what you want to do for a living, you got to figure out what you don't want to do. You got to go find out those things that you don't want to do. And, I've done a lot of stuff. And in order to get me to where I am, I didn't just land in underground wellness. I didn't land in ShawnCroxton.com. I didn't land in this position. I mean, I had to, dig holes and paint dorm rooms and clean toilets and, do all that dirty work and understand like, hey, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm good. I don't want to do that. And just kind of keep moving, checking out DVDs and CDs and doing all these things where I was like, no, this isn't the fit. And so I think sometimes we have this expectation that these things are just going to land in our lap and we're going to be like, okay, this is it. Sometimes you got to go through the muck in order to find that thing that you love. And so just stay open to it and it'll certainly happen for you. And you also have to just real quick, there's an amazing talk. And I hope your listeners get a chance to watch this amazing talk by Steve Harvey, who is actually becoming one of my favorite speakers. And you can find it on YouTube. And I think it's called Jump. And, he talks about finding your gifts. What are your gifts? And actually turning those gifts into your service, turning those gifts into your job. Sometimes we have these gifts, and we think that, the real gifts are like dunking a basketball. Or doing some high and mighty stuff. But there's a lot of people out there who have these gifts that, like being able to cut grass. He talked about his buddy who back in the day didn't want to go out with them at nighttime because he had to cut Miss Johnson's grass in the morning. And everybody would laugh and be like, you cutting grass? How much she paying you? And, now he's got a landscaping business that's worth $4 million. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's so important to identify what those gifts are. And sometimes we think that our gifts aren't significant enough. But as long as they're helping people, as long as they're helping Mrs. Johnson's grass and her front yard look amazing, that's an amazing service that's going to make a lot of people happy. And so I think everybody needs to watch that thing over and over again. Again, Steve Harvey, look it up on YouTube. It's called Jump.
Man, of course I've seen that. Of course.
I've listened to that thing so many times. You have no idea.
And it just rings home. It just, I think for so many of us, it's just about taking action. We have access to so much incredible information for free online and so much incredible inspiration. You mentioned Eric Thomas, E.T. He's another one. I remember reading his book and just been blown away. But until you take action on these things, nothing's going to happen. That I'm sure you heard of what's his name? That kid, 6 months to six figures. I think it's Peter Voog. Anyway, he wrote somewhere in there he mentions about how he talks about how he says, if somebody walked into a group of people and said, I love money. How many people are going to look at this guy, as he's some sort of self-seeking predator or he's going to get struck down by lightning, right? And then when I heard you on that interview talk with Jen, and I just remember thinking that how when you put yourself in the right place, when you put yourself in the right atmosphere, you keep hearing the same things. And it should be a key. It should be a sign that you're in the right space. And if you hear it more than once, right, then you need to jot it down. You hear obviously the universe is talking to you. All right, so Sean, finally, if you could give our listeners only one suggestion, what would it be?
Believe in yourself. Know that you can handle anything. There's nobody in this world, I don't care who it is, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Thomas Edison, or Barack Obama, whoever you want to talk about, none of them came into this world with anything that you didn't come into this world with. They might have had different talents that they developed, but they had to develop those talents. If they didn't develop those talents, they would have been like, the person who was good at rapping back in 12th grade, but never developed it. You know what I'm saying? Never became anything with it. But that's how I feel about myself. If I focus on anything, if I want to invent the new light bulb, whatever it is, I can do it. If that's the image that I create, if I truly believe in that. And also, if I'm thankful and grateful for it before it even happens. You know, that's when you believe. That's when you truly have faith, when you can be thankful for something that ain't even really happened because you know it's going to happen. You get there, you can achieve anything.
Oh, man. Sean, wow. Thank you so much for joining us, man. This has helped me more than you could even imagine.
My pleasure, Omar. This is fun.
This has been a blast. And I know it's helping all of our listeners. I know it will. So we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the